Many new buildings don't look like places for living. They look like places for rules. Heavy walls, fixed rooms, locked doors, and layouts that never change. Spaces feel rigid, like they're telling you where to sit, where to move, what to do. But this isn't just about how they look. It's about what these spaces make you feel. Let's talk about how walls shape the way we live and work, and why it's time to design for connection instead of confinement. Walls began as the most basic form of protection. In early human shelters, a wall kept out wind, rain, and wild animals. It marked a safe space, a boundary between life inside and the unknown outside. Imagine a small group of people huddled in a simple hut. The wall is not just wood or stone, it is a shield against cold nights and a barrier against predators. These walls were often made from materials close at hand, branches, mud, or stacked stones. They were functional and direct, built to solve immediate problems. In these early days, walls were about survival first, comfort second, and identity last. As human groups grew and began to settle, walls took on new roles. They no longer only kept out the cold or danger. They started to shape how people lived together. In classical societies, like ancient Greece and Rome, walls were used to create separate rooms within homes. These partitions gave people privacy and allowed for specialized activities like cooking, sleeping, or worship. A Roman villa might have a central courtyard with rooms branching off. The walls were still load-bearing, meaning they supported the weight of the roof. But they were now also tools for social order. Who got which room said something about status. A guest might be shown to a decorated space near the entrance, while servants lived in small rooms at the back. As time moved into the medieval period, walls grew thicker and more complex. Castles and large homes relied on heavy stone walls for defense. Inside, walls continued to organize space and reinforce hierarchy. Consider a great hall in a castle. The lord and lady would sit at a raised platform, while lower-ranking people sat at plain wooden tables below. Behind certain walls lay private chambers, accessible only to a select few. These physical barriers reflected social boundaries. Walls were now about power as much as protection. They could separate the elite from the common, the sacred from the profane, or men from women. For centuries, this pattern held. Walls divided space and carried the weight of roofs and upper floors. But with the industrial era came new building techniques. The development of steel and reinforced concrete changed architecture forever. Columns and beams could now carry loads that once required thick, solid walls. This freed up the interior of buildings. Suddenly, a wall did not have to hold up the roof. It could simply stand as a thin plane, defining space without heavy structural duty. This shift made possible open-plan designs. Large factories were early examples, with vast open floors to house machinery and workers. Over time, the idea spread to offices and homes. Think of a modern apartment where the kitchen flows into the living room. This layout would have been almost impossible in a medieval house. The wall between those spaces is now optional. It can be a half wall, a screen, or even just a change in floor material. The open plan reflects changes in how people want to live. Families might prefer shared spaces for cooking, eating, and relaxing together. Offices might remove walls to encourage teamwork and flexibility. The physical freedom comes from technology, but the design choices come from culture. Modernism in the 20th century pushed this idea further. Architects like Le Corbusier and Mies van der Rohe treated walls as independent planes, floating within a structural grid. A famous example is the Farnsworth House, where glass walls enclose a space supported by steel columns. The walls no longer appear heavy or permanent. They are light and mobile, almost like screens. This represents a complete reversal from the stone fortresses of the past. Yet even in this modern context, walls remain symbolic. A wall can still signal privacy or ownership. In open-plan offices, for example, companies sometimes add glass partitions to give a sense of separation without blocking light. In homes, people may use sliding panels or curtains to create temporary rooms. These choices show that while technology allows us to live without traditional walls, we often still desire them in some form. Imagine a family living in a fully open loft. At first, the openness feels exciting and free. Over time, they might start to crave boundaries, a quiet corner for reading, a hidden spot for messy tasks. They may add a bookshelf as a divider or hang a curtain to create a makeshift bedroom. This small act echoes thousands of years of history. It shows that walls are not just about structure. They are about how we feel and interact. In today's cities, walls also play roles beyond the individual home. Urban design often reflects social and economic divides. A wall might separate public land from private, or one neighborhood from another. Gated communities rely on walls to control access, much like medieval castles once did. In some cases, walls can even become political symbols, marking borders between nations. These examples remind us that walls are never neutral. They carry meaning and reflect values. Throughout history, walls have evolved with changes in technology and society. From rough shelters to sleek glass panels, they have adapted to human needs and desires. The rise of open-plan living shows that walls are not fixed necessities. They are choices shaped by culture and innovation. Whether we build them high and thick or remove them entirely, walls reveal how we imagine our lives together. Architecture does not have to begin with the idea of a closed room. Instead of starting with walls that divide, it can start with pieces that come together. This way of thinking sees a building as an assembly, not an enclosure. In this view, the focus is on how different elements meet, overlap, and interact. The parts are important, but the relationships between them matter more. A column meets a beam, a floor meets a stair, a window meets the sky. Each connection creates meaning and structure. The building becomes a network of links rather than a collection of sealed boxes. Imagine a marketplace under a canopy. There are no fixed walls between stalls. Instead, tables, poles, and awnings form temporary boundaries. People move freely, and the layout shifts throughout the day. The space works because of how its parts align and adjust, not because it is closed off. This is assembly in action. It allows change without tearing anything down. It invites participation and growth over time. The marketplace is not finished in a single act of design. It evolves through many small decisions made by its users. An open system works this way. It is built to adapt rather than to lock into place. A rigid plan assumes every need is known in advance. An open system accepts that needs will change. Think of a house designed with movable panels or rooms that can expand. A young couple may use the open floor as a studio. Later, when they have children, they might add lightweight dividers to create bedrooms. Years later, when the children move out, the walls can be removed again. The building supports different stages of life without losing its core structure. This approach can also shape larger projects. A school, for example, might start with a few simple buildings. As the community grows, more modules can be added. These additions do not have to match perfectly. They can plug into the existing framework like pieces in a puzzle. The result is a campus that feels alive and responsive, not frozen in time. It is never completely finished, and that is its strength. When you design through assembly, you rely less on partitions to create clarity. Instead, you use patterns that make space legible without cutting it apart. Alignment is one tool. If you line up columns, windows, or paths, you guide the eye and the body. A person walking through the space can sense order even if there are no walls marking rooms. Rhythm works in a similar way. Repeating elements like beams in a ceiling or rows of lights create a beat that organizes movement. This rhythm gives a sense of direction and scale. Modules add another layer of understanding. When you repeat a basic unit, like a square tile or a framed panel, you create a grid. People naturally read grids. They can understand where they are and how far they have moved by counting the units. This gives a sense of structure without needing solid barriers. For instance, a library could use rows of shelves and light fixtures to define areas for reading, studying, and gathering. No walls are required, but the space still feels clear and purposeful. Sightlines are perhaps the most powerful tool in this way of designing. When you can see across a space, you understand how different parts relate. A clear view lets you choose where to go and how to move. In a museum, for example, long views connect galleries. A visitor can see from one exhibit to the next, creating a sense of flow. Open sightlines also allow for shared experiences. In a school gym, parents can watch a game from a balcony while children play below. The space connects activities without mixing them. When design depends on assembly rather than enclosure, the key question changes. It is no longer what should we separate. Instead, it becomes how should we connect? This shift is subtle but profound. It changes the role of the architect. Instead of drawing lines to divide, the architect places elements to link. Consider a community center. In a traditional plan, there might be strict boundaries, a meeting room here, a kitchen there, a gym down the hall. Each function is locked into its own box. In an assembly-based design, these functions overlap. The edge of the gym might open to a shared courtyard. The kitchen might spill into a flexible dining area. A single element, like a wide stair, might serve as seating, stage, and pathway all at once. This way of working creates richer experiences. People can move between uses without passing through doors or hallways. They feel part of a larger whole instead of isolated in separate rooms. At the same time, the design remains flexible. If the needs of the community change, the connections can shift. A wall can move, a stair can expand, a courtyard can host new activities. The building stays useful because it was never fixed too tightly. Think of a small urban park built on an old industrial site. Instead of erasing the past, the designers keep some of the original structures: steel frames, concrete slabs, fragments of walls. These remnants become anchors for new layers: gardens, paths, playground equipment. The old and new pieces connect in unexpected ways. A former factory column might now hold a swing. A concrete platform might serve as a stage for performances. The park is not defined by a fence around its edge. It is defined by the interplay of its parts. In this sense, assembly is about relationships. Each piece gains meaning through its links to others. A bench matters because it faces a tree. A stair matters because it leads to a roof deck. A window matters because it frames a view of the street. The design is always in motion, shaped by the flows of people, light, and time. Even maintenance becomes part of the process. When a piece wears out, it can be replaced or reimagined without disturbing the whole. This approach echoes natural systems. In a forest, there are no walls, yet there is clear structure. Trees align along streams, paths form where people and animals walk. Openings appear where light reaches the ground. The forest adapts as seasons change, as trees fall, as new plants grow. An assembly-based building works the same way. It allows for growth, decay, and renewal. It welcomes change rather than resisting it. Imagine walking through a public library designed this way. There are no doors between sections. Instead, you notice a shift in ceiling height, a change in floor texture, a bend in the path. These subtle cues guide you without blocking your view. You feel oriented because the design speaks through rhythm and alignment. At the same time, you might see a corner where chairs have been rearranged for a small event. The building accepts this change easily because nothing is locked in place. By seeing architecture as assembly, we gain a broader view of space. Buildings become frameworks for life, open to interpretation and growth. Each connection tells a story. Each element plays a role. Together, they form places that are alive, connected, and ready for what comes next. A space does not need solid walls to feel organized. There are many ways to suggest boundaries without closing things off. These cues guide movement, create zones, and shape experience while keeping a sense of openness. They can be subtle or bold, physical or sensory. Each one works by signaling a change, telling people where one area ends and another begins. This approach allows spaces to stay flexible and connected while still feeling legible and structured. One of the most direct ways to create a boundary is through changes in level. A single step can define a new zone without blocking sightlines. Imagine a living room where the seating area is set on a slightly raised platform. Even though there is no wall, people understand they have entered a different part of the space. A sunken room works the same way in reverse. Think of a conversation pit, where a few steps down create a cozy, enclosed feeling. In a theater, steps guide movement and mark transitions between stage, audience, and backstage. These changes in height are easy for the body to read. You feel the shift as you move, and the difference stays in your memory. Level changes also help manage noise and activity. In a busy office, a raised area might hold quiet workstations, signaling focus and care. A lower area could host casual seating, where conversations can happen without disturbing others. In outdoor spaces, platforms can define gathering spots while still leaving the surrounding landscape open. A simple wooden deck in a park, for example, sets the stage for events or performances without needing fences or walls. The space above our heads is another powerful tool. Ceilings can do as much to shape a room as floors and walls. Dropped rigs, canopies, and ceiling coffers all create visual and spatial cues. Imagine walking into a restaurant where the ceiling over the bar dips lower, lined with warm lights. This overhead move signals intimacy and focus. It makes the bar feel like its own zone, even though it flows into the larger dining area. Ceiling coffers, recessed panels often seen in classical buildings, can be used to mark pathways or centers of activity. In a library, a series of coffers might run above the main reading tables, drawing the eye and giving structure without enclosing anything. In modern design, lightweight materials like fabric or mesh can create temporary canopies. At a festival, a series of fabric panels stretched overhead can define gathering spaces while letting air and light move freely. These overhead gestures work because people instinctively read the ceiling as part of the space they occupy. When it changes, they sense a shift in mood and purpose. Materials and colors offer another layer of spatial cues. A change in flooring can signal that you have moved into a different zone. Picture a house where the kitchen has tile, the living area has wood, and the hallway has carpet. The transition between these materials creates a clear boundary, even without a physical barrier. In public buildings, textured thresholds can guide movement. A strip of rough stone across a smooth floor tells you that you are entering a new area. Color works in a similar way. A field of bold color on the floor or ceiling can anchor a space. In a children's museum, a bright red floor might mark a play zone, while muted gray marks areas for adults. Patterns can also carry meaning. A grid of tiles might signal order and focus, while a swirling pattern suggests play and energy. These changes are easy for people to notice, even without conscious thought. They create an intuitive map of the space. Lighting adds another powerful tool for shaping experience. Light and shadow can act as soft edges, guiding movement and setting moods. A pool of bright light draws people in, while darker areas feel more private. In a cafe, pendant lights above tables create small circles of intimacy within a larger room. In a gallery, carefully directed lights can highlight pathways and art pieces, subtly telling visitors where to go. Shadows can also define space. Think of sunlight streaming through a row of trees, creating bands of light and dark on the ground. These shifting patterns give structure to the open landscape. Architects can design similar effects with screens, latticework, or perforated panels. As the sun moves, the play of shadow changes, keeping the space dynamic and alive. Sound is an often overlooked element in spatial design, yet it plays a key role in how we experience boundaries. Acoustics can create soft, invisible edges. A shift in sound quality tells you that you have entered a new area. Imagine walking from a lively, echoing hall into a quiet, carpeted room. You feel the change before you even see it. Designers can shape these effects with materials and surfaces. Hard, reflective surfaces like glass or concrete amplify sound, making a space feel active and energetic. Soft materials like fabric, wood, or acoustic panels absorb sound, creating calm and focus. In a busy co-working space, this contrast might be used to separate loud collaboration zones from quiet study areas. The boundaries are not visible, but everyone senses them. In some cases, sound can be used as a positive marker. A gentle fountain in a courtyard creates a zone of calm. A series of chimes might mark the entrance to a garden. These auditory cues add richness and help people navigate complex spaces without signs or walls. When all these strategies come together, they create a layered experience. Consider a museum lobby designed with multiple overlapping cues. A raised platform holds the ticket counter, signaling its importance. Above it, a drop ceiling with warm lighting draws attention. The flooring shifts from stone at the entrance to wood near the cafe, guiding movement without barriers. Light pools highlight key circulation paths, while quiet background music in one corner signals a seating area. Visitors move smoothly through the space, reading these cues on many levels. This approach works just as well at smaller scales. In a home, a single step down into a living area can define it as a gathering place. A pendant light over the dining table creates focus, while a change from tile to rug marks a shift in function. Even in a small apartment, these subtle moves can create a sense of richness and variety without adding walls that make the space feel cramped. The beauty of these cues lies in their flexibility. A wall is fixed and absolute. Once it is built, it takes effort to move or remove it. But a change in material, light, or sound can be adjusted as needs evolve. A store might rearrange its ceiling elements to highlight new products. A school might repaint zones to match shifting age groups or activities. These adaptations keep spaces responsive to the people who use them. When boundaries are suggested rather than enforced, people have more freedom. They can cross zones easily, linger between them, or reinterpret their use. This creates a sense of openness and possibility. Instead of feeling boxed in, people experience a space as a continuous field with many layers of meaning. The cues work quietly in the background, shaping behavior without dictating it. Through level changes, overhead moves, material and color shifts, light and shadow, and acoustic design, spaces can achieve clarity without confinement. Each tool offers a different way to guide, define, and connect. Together, they form a rich vocabulary that replaces the need for walls while keeping the architecture alive, open, and adaptable. Some spaces need separation, but they do not always need heavy, permanent walls. Boundaries can be soft, flexible, and even movable. These lighter enclosures let air, light, and sound flow while still creating a sense of privacy or focus. They work by filtering instead of blocking, by defining edges without cutting people off. These boundaries are especially useful in shared spaces where activities overlap and change often. Screens are one of the simplest ways to form a boundary. They can be freestanding panels, folding elements, or built-in pieces. A screen does not close a room, it redirects sightlines. Imagine a studio apartment where the bed sits behind a tall screen. The screen gives privacy without taking up much space or stopping airflow. In offices, screens can create clusters of workstations, giving each person a defined area while keeping the larger room open. Screens can be temporary or permanent, heavy or light, plain or decorative. Their strength lies in their adaptability. Curtains are even more flexible. They can be drawn when needed and pushed aside when not. In a hospital, curtains around beds allow patients to have moments of privacy while staff can still move freely. In a theater, heavy curtains can divide backstage areas or frame the stage itself. Even at home, a curtain can turn a corner of a room into a reading nook or workspace. Because curtains move so easily, they allow a single space to serve many purposes over the course of a day. Vegetation can act as a living boundary. Plants add softness and life while marking edges. A row of tall grasses can separate a path from a seating area in a garden. In a public plaza, clusters of trees can form outdoor rooms without walls. Indoors, potted plants can break up an office floor plan, adding privacy and reducing noise. Vegetation offers a dynamic quality. It grows, changes with the seasons, and invites birds and insects. It creates a boundary that feels natural rather than imposed. Furniture can also act as a divider. A sofa positioned carefully can define a living space in an open-plan home. A long table can separate a kitchen from a dining area. Bookshelves can create partitions while also providing storage. These pieces do not just fill a room, they shape it. Unlike walls, they can be rearranged when needs change. This makes furniture a powerful tool for people who want flexibility without renovation. In a co-working space, for instance, clusters of chairs and tables can be moved daily to support different group sizes and activities. Perforated elements offer another approach. These are materials that filter light and views while keeping spaces connected. Traditional jaalis, intricate lattice screens used in South Asian architecture, are a classic example. They create privacy while allowing air and light to pass through. In hot climates, this keeps interiors cool without making them dark or closed. Slatted timber screens work in a similar way. The gaps between the slats let you see movement and light beyond, but they soften the view. This makes them ideal for stair railings, porch enclosures, or room dividers. Mesh is another versatile material. A metal mesh can act as a safety barrier, sunshade, or visual filter. These perforated boundaries create layers rather than hard stops. Imagine walking through a gallery where some walls are solid and others are made of perforated panels. You catch glimpses of other rooms through the patterns. This adds depth and curiosity. It also helps with orientation, as you always have some sense of what lies beyond. In a workplace, perforated elements can define zones while allowing teams to see and hear each other. The result is privacy without isolation. Transparency and opacity can also be used as gradients. Instead of a boundary that is fully open or fully closed, you can design one that changes gradually. Glass is a common material for this. A sheet of glass can be clear at the top and frosted at the bottom, offering privacy while still admitting light. This is useful in bathrooms, conference rooms, or clinics. The level of transparency can be adjusted with films or patterns. Even textiles can have this effect. A curtain made of loosely woven fabric offers partial views, while a denser weave blocks them more fully. Operable partitions take this idea further. These are walls that move. They can slide, fold, or pivot, opening and closing as needed. In a school gym, a large partition might divide the space into two smaller courts for practice, then fold away to create one big hall for assemblies. In a home, sliding panels can close off bedrooms at night and open them during the day. Operable partitions require careful hardware and planning, but they give unmatched flexibility. They allow a single space to serve many roles over time. Privacy does not have to mean complete separation. The key is to balance seclusion with continuity. A person might want to focus on their work without feeling cut off from others. A family might want to create a quiet corner without losing the sense of being together. This balance can be achieved through thoughtful layering. Imagine a cafe designed with multiple levels of enclosure. At the center, a large communal table encourages social interaction. Around the edges, low bookshelves create semi-private nooks. Some areas have tall plants or hanging fabric panels for more separation. The boundaries are varied and adjustable. People can choose where to sit based on their mood or activity. The space feels connected as a whole, yet it offers pockets of retreat. This strategy also works outdoors. In a public park, a tall hedge might block wind and noise from a busy street. Inside the park, smaller clusters of vegetation or lightweight pergolas create distinct areas for play, rest, and events. The edges are porous, allowing views and movement to flow freely. This keeps the park open and inviting while still giving people a sense of place. Even sound can act as a form of privacy. A lightweight screen might not block noise, but combined with acoustic panels or soft surfaces, it can reduce echo and create a calmer environment. In offices, furniture with built-in sound absorption can shape acoustic zones. A lounge area with soft upholstery will naturally feel more private than a hard, echoing hallway. The best boundaries are often those that can change. A curtain can be tied back, a screen folded away, a partition moved. This allows spaces to adapt throughout the day or year. A living room might open wide for a party, then shrink to a cozy nook for reading. A school cafeteria might expand at lunchtime, then close into smaller classrooms in the afternoon. These shifts make buildings more useful and resilient. Lightweight enclosures are also easier to build, replace, or recycle. A heavy wall requires demolition when needs change. A fabric screen or slatted panel can be adjusted or reused with little waste. This makes them practical for temporary uses like festivals, pop-up shops, or emergency housing. They offer structure without long-term commitment. The emotional effect of these boundaries should not be overlooked. A sheer curtain glowing in the sunlight feels very different from a blank wall. A screen made of warm wood slats gives a sense of comfort and craft. These sensory qualities shape how people feel in a space. A well-chosen boundary can invite curiosity, calm anxiety, or spark connection. Through screens, curtains, vegetation, furniture, perforated panels, transparency gradients, and movable partitions, designers can create spaces that are both open and private. These strategies offer choices rather than absolutes. They support the full range of human activities, from gathering to retreating, from seeing to hiding. In this way, boundaries become tools for connection rather than barriers to it. The line between indoors and outdoors does not have to be sharp. A building can extend into its surroundings, and the landscape can reach inward. This blending creates spaces that feel larger, richer, and more connected to nature. Instead of treating a wall as a strict divide, design can invite movement and views to pass through. The result is a sense of continuity, where inside and outside support each other. Courtyards are one of the oldest ways to bring the outdoors into daily life. In hot, dry climates, a central courtyard provides light, air, and a private open space. Imagine a house built around such a void. Rooms open directly to the sky, yet they are sheltered by surrounding walls. The courtyard becomes a living room, garden, and gathering place all at once. At night, cool air settles in the open center, refreshing the rooms around it. In the morning, sunlight spills in and changes the mood of the whole house. The boundary between interior and exterior dissolves because the courtyard acts as both. Verandas work in a similar way. A deep roof extends beyond the walls, shading a walkway or sitting area. In tropical regions, verandas protect against rain while still allowing breezes to flow. They serve as in-between spaces, not fully indoors, but not fully exposed. Families use verandas for eating, socializing, or resting during the heat of the day. They also create a welcoming edge to the building, softening the transition from public street to private home. The Japanese engawa takes this idea further. It is a narrow strip of floor that wraps around a house, like a continuous porch. Sliding panels open fully, so the engawa becomes part of both the interior and the garden. People can sit there to enjoy the view, leave shoes before stepping inside, or move along the edge of the house. Because it is neither room nor yard, it feels free and adaptable. This subtle space shows how architecture can embrace ambiguity rather than forcing a strict boundary. Large operable openings play a key role in blending inside and outside. A wide sliding door or folding wall can connect a living area to a terrace or garden. When closed, it offers protection from weather. When open, it creates one seamless space. Picture a kitchen with a folding glass wall that opens to an outdoor dining area. On warm evenings, the two merge into a single setting for cooking and gathering. This kind of design works best when the floor levels match and there is no threshold to trip over. Even a small step can break the feeling of continuity. Continuous floor and soffit lines reinforce this connection. When the same material runs from inside to outside, the eye reads the space as unified. A concrete floor can extend beyond the wall to form a patio. A wood ceiling can continue under a porch roof. These gestures are simple but powerful. They make it hard to tell where the building stops and the landscape begins. Details matter in this type of design. Drainage must be handled carefully, so water does not collect at the threshold. Hidden gutters, sloped surfaces, and subtle channels keep everything dry without interrupting the visual flow. Hardware for operable doors must be smooth and precise so the transition feels effortless. Even small gaps can disrupt the sense of unity. Achieving a seamless connection requires attention to these quiet, technical elements. Designing for microclimate is essential when blurring indoors and outdoors. The goal is to make outdoor areas comfortable enough to use regularly. Shade is the first tool. Roof overhangs, trellises, and planted pergolas block harsh sun while letting in light and air. A shaded veranda can feel pleasant even in hot weather. Breezes are another key factor. Openings should be placed to catch prevailing winds and draw them through the building. In some climates, ceiling fans or light fabric screens can enhance natural airflow. Water can also shape microclimate. A small pool or fountain near a sitting area creates cooling through evaporation. As the air passes over the water, it feels fresher and more comfortable. This effect works well in courtyards, where walls help contain the cool air. Even a narrow strip of water along a path can make a difference. These features are practical as well as beautiful. They encourage people to spend time outdoors, bridging the gap between house and landscape. The landscape itself can act as a room maker. Trees, shrubs, and terrain create edges and enclosures just like walls do. A group of trees can form a natural ceiling, their branches filtering light like a roof. A hedge can define a boundary while still feeling alive and permeable. Changes in ground level, such as a raised terrace or sunken garden, signal shifts in use and mood. These elements let outdoor spaces function as rooms, each with its own character. Imagine a backyard designed with this approach. Closest to the house, a paved terrace serves as a dining room. Beyond it, a grassy area becomes a playroom for children. At the far edge, a cluster of trees forms a quiet retreat for reading or reflection. Each zone flows into the next without fences or solid barriers. The landscape takes on the role of architecture, while the house stretches outward to meet it. Lighting plays a role as well. At night, carefully placed fixtures can extend the sense of interior space into the garden. Soft pools of light under trees or along paths make the outdoors feel welcoming and safe. Inside, dimmable lights near openings prevent glare and help the transition feel natural. The goal is to maintain a continuous experience, day or night. Blurring indoors and outdoors also changes how people use their homes. A family might cook inside but eat outside, moving back and forth with ease. Children might play partly in the living room and partly in the yard, treating both as one extended space. Guests might flow between garden and dining area during a party without noticing a boundary. This flexibility supports a more fluid, relaxed way of living. Seasonal changes add another layer. In summer, wide openings and shaded verandas invite breezes. In winter, sliding panels or folding doors can close tightly, turning outdoor rooms into protected enclosures. Materials like wood and stone age gracefully through these cycles, connecting people to time and nature. Even when the garden is bare, the visual link remains. Looking out through a large opening to falling snow or autumn leaves keeps the connection alive. These blurred boundaries benefit urban spaces as well. In dense cities, a small courtyard or balcony can provide a vital link to the outdoors. When designed carefully, these areas feel like extensions of the home. A tiny balcony with a continuous floor and sliding glass door can function as a breakfast nook, reading corner, or garden. Even a narrow street can act as shared outdoor space if ground floors open fully to it. This way of thinking changes the role of architecture. Instead of sealing people inside, buildings frame relationships with their surroundings. They mediate between shelter and exposure, privacy and community. A wall becomes not an endpoint, but a filter. A door becomes not just an entry, but a connector. When these elements work together, the edge between indoors and outdoors fades into a living, breathing threshold. Through courtyards, verandas, and gawa, operable openings, continuous surfaces, microclimate design, and landscapes that act like rooms, architecture can create spaces that are open and protective at the same time. These spaces support daily life in richer ways, making the outdoors part of the home and the home part of the landscape. In this shared zone, nature and structure meet, and people move freely between them. In buildings with few fixed walls, certain elements must stay in place while others remain flexible. The key is knowing what to anchor and what to leave open. Kitchens, bathrooms, and mechanical systems are best grouped into service cores. These areas need plumbing, power, and ventilation. Moving them later is difficult and expensive. By locating them in compact central zones, the rest of the floor can stay adaptable. Imagine an apartment where the kitchen and bathroom sit back to back in one block. Around them, living, dining, and sleeping areas flow freely. Over time, these open areas can be rearranged or repurposed without disturbing the essential systems. A well-planned core saves both space and cost. Pipes, wires, and ducts can stack vertically through multiple floors, reducing complexity. This approach works in small homes and large buildings alike. In an office tower, for example, elevators, restrooms, and utility shafts are often grouped in the middle. The perimeter then stays open for workspaces that can change as tenants come and go. This clear division between fixed and flexible parts creates long-term resilience. It also helps people understand how the building works. When systems are neatly organized, maintenance becomes easier and less disruptive. Designing wall-light buildings starts with structure. Frames, spans, and grids must be chosen with future change in mind. A frame of columns and beams provides support without relying on interior walls. The spacing of these columns determines what can fit beneath them. Wide spans create large open areas, but may require deeper beams or stronger materials. Tighter grids use smaller members, but introduce more obstacles. Choosing the right balance depends on the intended use. Consider a library designed for adaptability. A regular grid of columns supports the roof and floors. The spaces between columns can host bookshelves today and study areas tomorrow. If the library later needs to add a cafe or event space, walls can be inserted or removed without altering the main frame. In contrast, a building with load-bearing walls locks functions in place. Changing it means demolition, which is costly and wasteful. A well-planned structural grid avoids this trap by treating walls as optional rather than essential. Flexibility must also extend to services. Mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems should allow for reconfiguration. Overhead cable trays, raised floors, and modular ductwork make it easier to reroute connections when layouts shift. In an open office, for instance, floor boxes can deliver power wherever desks are placed. Lighting can be mounted on tracks instead of fixed positions, so it can move with furniture. This approach keeps the space alive and responsive to new needs. Acoustic control becomes critical when walls are minimized. Without solid barriers, sound can travel freely, causing distraction or discomfort. Designers must use materials and layouts that absorb or block noise in strategic ways. Ceilings can incorporate acoustic panels to reduce echo. Floors can use soft finishes like carpet or cork to dampen footsteps. Even furniture can help. High-backed seating and fabric-covered partitions create quiet zones without closing off space entirely. Zoning noisy and quiet activities is another strategy. Placing active functions like kitchens or copy rooms near the core keeps their noise away from calm areas like bedrooms or reading spaces. This planning is subtle but effective. It relies on distance and material choice rather than heavy walls. In some cases, partial enclosures or screens can add extra sound control while preserving openness. Fire safety in wall-light buildings requires careful planning. Traditional fire-rated walls create compartments that slow the spread of smoke and flames. Without these, other measures must be used. Sprinkler systems are essential. They act quickly to contain fires before they grow. Smoke detectors and alarms must be integrated throughout the open space. Materials also play a role. Non-combustible finishes, fire-rated ceilings, and protected structural members reduce risk. Paths for egress must be clear and direct. Even without walls, people must know how to exit safely. Marked routes, illuminated signs, and wide corridors help guide movement. In larger buildings, fire-rated stairwells or protected cores provide safe zones. These features may be hidden within the service core, so they do not disrupt the openness of the main spaces. Good planning ensures safety without clutter or confusion. Maintenance is another key factor. In a wall-light building, systems are often exposed or lightly covered. This makes them easier to access, but also more visible. Designers must plan for both function and appearance. Access panels should blend with surrounding surfaces while still allowing quick entry for repairs. Concealed tracks or removable covers can hide wiring and ducts until needed. This approach keeps the space clean while supporting efficient upkeep. A clear playbook for reconfiguration is essential. When walls are minimal, people may be tempted to move things without understanding the consequences. A well-documented guide helps owners and users make smart decisions. It can include diagrams showing where partitions can be added or removed, instructions for adjusting lighting or outlets, and safety rules for maintaining clear egress paths. This playbook turns flexibility from a vague idea into a practical tool. Imagine a community center designed for changing programs. The core holds restrooms, storage, and mechanical equipment. Around it, a large open hall can serve many purposes: yoga in the morning, markets on weekends, performances at night. When the layout needs to shift, lightweight panels and movable furniture make the change simple. Overhead, tracks carry lighting and curtains that can be repositioned easily. Staff follow a clear guide to set up each configuration, ensuring safety and efficiency. The building stays relevant for years because it was planned for growth and adaptation from the start. The same thinking applies to housing. A row of townhouses might share a common service spine that contains plumbing and ventilation. This leaves the rest of each unit open for owners to customize. Over time, families can rearrange spaces without disturbing their neighbors or the building systems. This approach balances individual freedom with collective stability. The success of a wall-light building depends on precision. Every element must be carefully considered, from column placement to drainage details. Small mistakes can have large impacts when walls are not there to hide them. Coordination between architects, engineers, and builders is crucial. The structure, services, and finishes must work together seamlessly. Technology supports this effort. Building information models can track how systems interact and evolve over time. Sensors can monitor performance, alerting staff to maintenance needs before problems grow. These tools make it easier to manage flexible spaces while keeping them safe and efficient. Ultimately, a wall-light building is like a living framework. Its fixed parts provide stability and order. Its open areas invite change and creativity. By concentrating kitchens, bathrooms, and mechanical systems into service cores, and by using structure-first thinking, designers can create buildings that last. Careful planning for acoustics, fire safety, egress, and maintenance ensures these buildings are practical as well as beautiful. With clear systems and strategies in place, the absence of walls becomes a strength rather than a challenge. Le Corbusier's work changed how architects thought about walls in space. In projects like the Villa Savoy, he treated the house as a set of floating planes supported by slender columns, or pilotis. This move separated structure from enclosure. Instead of heavy walls carrying loads, thin columns did the work. The walls could then be placed freely, acting as screens rather than barriers. Walking through the Villa Savoy, you feel this freedom. The ground floor is mostly open, with the house lifted above the landscape. Ramps and stairs lead to the main living level, where rooms flow into each other and extend outward to terraces. Large strips of windows bring in light and views, making the interior feel continuous with the outside. The open plan here was not just about aesthetics. It was a direct result of new materials and methods. Concrete and steel allowed for longer spans and lighter frames. Le Corbusier saw this as a chance to rethink how people lived. A house no longer needed to be a series of sealed boxes. It could be open, airy, and flexible. This shift reflected modern life, with its emphasis on movement and change. The Villa Savoy became a symbol of this new approach. Its pilotis lifted the building above damp ground, while the roof terrace returned green space lost to the footprint below. The walls became thin planes, sometimes solid, sometimes glass, arranged for privacy, light, and view rather than structure. In a very different context, Mughal architecture developed another way of handling walls. Jaalis, or perforated screens, were a hallmark of this tradition. Made from intricately carved stone, they served several purposes at once. They provided privacy, especially for women in royal households, while still allowing air and light to pass through. A jaali softened harsh sunlight, casting intricate shadows that changed throughout the day. In hot climates, this shading effect reduced heat and glare while allowing ventilation. The beauty of the jaali lay in its integration of function and ornament. A single element addressed climate, culture, and craft. From inside, you could see out without being fully seen. From outside, the building gained a sense of depth and richness. In palaces like the Red Fort or the Taj Mahal, jaalis created layers between interior and exterior. These layers made spaces feel more complex and alive. The walls were not simply solid or void. They were dynamic filters, shaping experience as much as enclosing space. The use of jaalis shows a deep understanding of local climate and social needs. In a world without mechanical cooling, passive strategies were essential. The perforated screen acted like a natural air conditioner, drawing breezes while blocking direct sun. At the same time, it reflected social customs around modesty and privacy. The craft of carving stone into delicate patterns also expressed skill and artistry. The result was a system where cultural logic and environmental performance came together seamlessly. Japanese traditions offer yet another perspective. In many traditional houses, boundaries were layered rather than absolute. The engawa, a narrow strip of floor along the edge of the house, acted as a threshold between inside and outside. It was neither fully room nor fully garden. People used it for sitting, moving, and pausing. Because it was continuous around the house, it linked all sides and created a sense of flow. Shoji screens extended this idea. Made of wood frames with translucent paper, they slid open and closed as needed. During the day, they filtered light, creating a soft glow inside. At night, they provided privacy while still feeling light and temporary. Unlike heavy doors or walls, shoji could be moved with ease. A single room could serve as living space, dining space, or sleeping space, depending on how the screens were arranged. This flexibility reflected a cultural emphasis on adaptability and minimalism. Layered thresholds defined Japanese spaces. A visitor might pass through a garden gate, then a covered porch, then the engawa, then the interior rooms. Each step marked a subtle shift in mood and status. These layers controlled temperature, light, and privacy without shutting anything off completely. Even the garden was treated as an extension of the house, carefully composed to be viewed from within. The boundaries were soft and porous, encouraging harmony between built form and nature. These traditions relied on minimal means. Thin wooden frames, paper, stone, and earth were arranged with great care. The focus was on relationships rather than objects. A change in floor height or texture signaled a new zone. A sliding panel redefined space without rebuilding it. This approach produced spaces that felt rich yet light, ordered yet free. When comparing these examples, certain lessons emerge. In Le Corbusier's modernist work, technology enabled new freedoms. Steel and concrete allowed walls to lose their structural role and become independent. The open plan reflected a shift toward mobility and openness in modern life. The Villa Savoy shows how a building can be both rational and poetic, using minimal elements to create maximum experience. The Mughal jaali represents a different kind of intelligence. Instead of relying on machines or heavy systems, it solved problems through form and material. The screen merged privacy, comfort, and beauty into one device. It worked with natural forces rather than against them. Its layered effect gave depth and complexity to space while remaining rooted in cultural meaning. Japanese traditions emphasize impermanence and subtlety. The Engawa and shoji show how boundaries can be fluid and responsive. Rooms are not fixed. They change with the season, the event, or the time of day. This approach values the in-between, the spaces that are neither fully inside nor fully outside. It relies on careful detailing rather than heavy construction. All three traditions share a concern for fit. They respond to climate, culture, and human behavior. They use minimal means to achieve maximum effect. Le Corbusier's planes and pilotis create openness through technology. The jaalis creates filtered space through craft. The Japanese house creates layered thresholds through light construction. Each solution grows from its context. Imagine combining these lessons in a single project. A modern building could use structural frames to free the walls, like the Villa Savoy. Its outer layers could include perforated panels that filter light and air, echoing the jaalis. Inside, movable screens could allow rooms to shift and adapt, as in a Japanese house. The result would not copy any one tradition, but would weave them together. It would balance permanence and change, openness and privacy, technology and craft. These historic examples remind us that walls are never just walls. They are cultural artifacts, shaped by climate, material, and meaning. They can be heavy or light, fixed or moving, solid or perforated. By studying past solutions, architects gain a wider set of tools. They learn how to shape space, not by default, but by choice, using the simplest means to create the richest experiences. In the Villa Savoy, the walls float between slender columns, defining zones without enclosing them. In a Mughal palace, carved screens turn sunlight into patterns while cooling the air. In a Japanese home, a paper panel slides open to reveal a garden framed by the Engawa. These moments show the power of design to connect people, culture, and environment. They remind us that architecture is not just about building things, but about shaping relationships through space and time. Shigeru Ban's wall-less house pushes the idea of openness to its extreme. Instead of fixed walls, the house uses movable panels that slide and fold. These panels can close off spaces when privacy or shelter is needed, and open wide to create one continuous field. At its most open, the entire house feels like a single flowing room connected to the outdoors. This design challenges the assumption that a house must have a fixed layout. It invites its occupants to rethink how they live day to day. For example, a family dinner might take place in a small enclosed corner one night and in a wide open space the next. The boundaries shift with the weather, the activity, and the mood. This level of flexibility requires careful planning. The structure holds the roof with a clear grid of posts and beams, leaving the walls free to move. Services like plumbing and wiring are concentrated in a fixed core so they do not interfere with the openness. The design asks a lot from its users. They must actively shape the space, opening and closing panels throughout the day. For some, this involvement is exciting and empowering. For others, it may feel demanding. The wall-less house shows the possibilities of radical adaptability, but also highlights the need to balance freedom with practicality. Tato Architects in Osaka approach space in a different way. Instead of removing walls entirely, they play with levels. In one project, the floor is broken into staggered and stacked platforms at different heights. Each level defines a zone without using partitions. A raised area might become a sleeping space, while a lower area becomes a living or dining zone. This subtle topography guides behavior while keeping the plan open. The effect is like walking through a landscape rather than a series of rooms. As you move from one level to another, you sense shifts in function and atmosphere. The boundaries are felt in the body rather than seen in the form of walls. This approach works especially well in small urban houses where every square meter counts. By varying heights, Tato creates a sense of separation and intimacy without losing visual connection. Families can be together while still having distinct personal areas. Yamazaki Kentaro's doll's house takes openness in yet another direction. Instead of a finished building with clear divisions, it presents a framework for the occupants to complete. The structure is a simple grid of posts and beams. Within this skeleton, people add their own walls, curtains, furniture, and objects. Over time, the house becomes a reflection of its users' choices and changes. This design rejects the idea that an architect must define every detail. It sees the house as a living process rather than a fixed product. At first, the space may feel raw and incomplete. Slowly, as residents make decisions, it gains character and specificity. One family might fill it with bookshelves and textiles. Another might leave it open and sparse. The frame supports all these possibilities without dictating them. The doll's house also raises questions about authorship. Who truly creates the architecture? The designer who builds the frame, or the people who inhabit it? This approach works best in communities or families comfortable with experimentation. It gives them freedom, but also responsibility. The risk is that without clear guidance, the space can become chaotic or inconsistent. Still, it offers a powerful lesson about flexibility and participation. Bernhard Leitner's Sound Cube explores boundaries in a completely non-visual way. In this project, sound itself becomes the material of architecture. The Sound Cube is a room where speakers are arranged to create precise acoustic patterns. As you move through it, you feel invisible walls and zones made entirely of sound. One step can take you from a zone of silence into a zone filled with vibrations or music. This experiment shows how space can be shaped without physical elements at all. It challenges the idea that architecture must be built from solid materials. In a way, it recalls earlier traditions where sound played a role in defining space. In cathedrals, echoes create a sense of vastness. In markets, overlapping voices signal different zones. Leitner takes this to a new level by using sound as the main structure. While the Sound Cube may not be a practical building type, it opens up possibilities for theaters, public spaces, or even hospitals where acoustics can guide behavior and mood. These contemporary experiments each test the limits of what a building can be. The wall-less house shows maximum openness, but its reliance on movable panels requires active management and careful detailing. It works well for people who enjoy constant change, but might overwhelm those who prefer stability. Tato's staggered levels offer a quieter form of innovation. By shaping the ground plane instead of removing walls, they create subtle separations that feel natural and intuitive. This approach adapts easily to many contexts, from compact houses to larger cultural spaces. Yamazaki Kentaro's Doll's House shifts the focus from the architect to the inhabitants. It suggests that buildings can evolve over time through user participation. This model works best when people are willing to engage creatively. In places where occupants expect finished products, it may cause confusion or frustration. Still, its lesson about openness to change is valuable for all designers. Leitner's Sound Cube operates at the edge of architecture and art. It is less about building than about experience. While it may not be directly copied, its ideas about sensory boundaries can influence how designers think about sound in everyday buildings. A cafe might use subtle sound zones to create intimacy. A library might shape quiet areas through acoustics rather than walls. These are practical adaptations of a radical experiment. The key in studying these projects is knowing what to copy and what to adapt. Copying a design outright can fail if the context is different. For instance, the wall-less house makes sense in a mild climate where large openings are comfortable most of the year. In a colder or wetter region, its operable panels might need to be heavier and more insulated, or its openness might need to be scaled back. The idea of flexibility remains useful, but the form must change. Similarly, Tato's level-based zoning works best where floor heights can be varied without accessibility problems. In a setting with strict codes or many users with mobility needs, other strategies may be better. The core principle, defining space through subtle shifts, can still apply, using changes in material, lighting, or ceiling height instead of steps. The Doll's House relies on a culture of user involvement. In some places, this participatory model fits well, encouraging community and creativity. In others, people may prefer clear boundaries and finished spaces. Architects can still learn from its openness by designing buildings that allow small, easy changes without requiring major construction. Even the sound cube, though experimental, offers lessons. It reminds designers that space is multisensory. Light, sound, smell, and touch all shape experience. A well-designed acoustic environment can make a space feel calm, lively, or safe without adding physical barriers. These contemporary case studies show that the role of walls is not fixed. A wall can be solid, movable, partial, or even invisible. Boundaries can come from structure, levels, participation, or sound. Each project offers a different lens for seeing space. By studying them carefully, designers can expand their toolkits and respond more creatively to the needs of people and places. The goal is not to replicate these houses or installations exactly, but to extract their underlying principles. With thoughtful adaptation, ideas born in one context can inspire solutions in another, leading to buildings that are both innovative and deeply grounded in their settings. Open buildings create new ways of living and working, but they also bring social questions. When there are fewer walls, people see and hear more of each other. This can build a sense of community. Families might cook, work, and rest together in shared spaces. Care work becomes more visible. A parent can watch children while preparing meals or doing other tasks. In a workplace, open layouts can make teens feel connected and aware of each other's efforts. Visibility helps prevent isolation and can create shared responsibility. Yet this same openness can lead to stress. Without places to retreat, people may feel exposed or overwhelmed. In a home, constant visibility can blur roles and wear down privacy. A child doing homework might be distracted by noise from the kitchen. An adult trying to rest might feel pressured to engage with others because there is no clear boundary. In offices, open layouts can cause burnout when there is no quiet space to focus. The challenge is to balance togetherness with privacy. Designers can support this balance by creating zones with different levels of enclosure. A home might include an alcove for reading or a small screened area for private calls. In shared workplaces, acoustic booths or small rooms can provide temporary escape without fragmenting the whole layout. Even lightweight moves like curtains or furniture clusters can give people a sense of control. When individuals can choose between open and closed settings, they are less likely to feel trapped. Environmental impact is another key factor. Wall-light buildings often use fewer materials because they rely on frames and open spans rather than thick partitions. This can reduce the embodied carbon of a project, especially when paired with sustainable materials like timber or recycled metal. Open designs also allow natural light to travel farther into the building. Without walls blocking it, daylight can reach deep into interiors, reducing the need for artificial lighting during the day. Cross-ventilation is easier when spaces are open. Air can flow across rooms, carrying heat and moisture out while bringing fresh air in. This passive cooling reduces reliance on mechanical systems. In warm climates, it can make a building far more comfortable and energy efficient. For example, a house with operable windows on opposite sides can use breezes to cool itself at night. Large openings paired with shading devices like overhangs or screens can block harsh sun while still allowing airflow. These strategies create comfortable, low-energy spaces. However, openness brings risks. Noise is one of the most common problems. Without walls, sound moves freely. In homes, this can mean that a TV in one corner disrupts someone sleeping in another. In offices, overlapping conversations can make concentration difficult. To address this, designers must think about acoustics from the start. Absorptive materials like cork, fabric, and acoustic panels reduce echo. Rugs and soft furniture dampen footsteps. Even changes in ceiling height can help direct sound away from sensitive areas. Safety is another concern. Large openings invite weather, wildlife, and sometimes intruders. A house with operable walls must protect against rain and wind. Careful detailing ensures water drains away without damaging interiors. Screens and overhangs can keep insects out while allowing ventilation. Security can be managed through locks, sensors, and thoughtful landscaping that provides visibility without creating hiding spots. Fire safety requires special attention in open layouts. Without compartmentalizing walls, smoke and flames can spread quickly. Sprinkler systems are essential. Non-combustible materials like metal and treated wood add another layer of protection. Exit routes must be clear and direct. Even in an open plan, pathways should be marked and free of obstacles. Fire-rated stairwells or protected cores can provide safe zones where people can gather before exiting the building. Weather is a constant factor, especially in regions with extreme climates. Large glass openings may overheat a space in summer or leak warmth in winter. Designers must use high-performance glazing, shading devices, and insulated frames to manage these effects. Operable elements like louvers or shutters can adjust to changing conditions. In places with heavy rain or snow, roof slopes, drainage channels, and durable materials prevent water damage. Openness does not mean vulnerability if the right protections are in place. Wildlife is another layer to consider. In rural areas or places with strong ecosystems, buildings must respect local animals and plants. Large openings can invite birds, insects, or even larger creatures inside. Screens, vegetation buffers, and secure storage areas help prevent conflict. Lighting must be designed to reduce harm to nocturnal species. These choices make buildings more harmonious with their surroundings. Regulations shape how openness can be achieved. Building codes set minimum standards for safety, accessibility, and performance. Open plans must still meet these requirements. For instance, accessibility rules may dictate clear widths for circulation paths and step-free connections between levels. A house with staggered platforms must include ramps or lifts so everyone can use it. Codes also govern emergency exits, ventilation rates, and fire separations. Designers need to integrate these elements without undermining openness. Insurance adds another layer of regulation. Insurers assess risk based on factors like fire protection, security, and structural stability. A building with large openings or unconventional layouts may face higher premiums unless it includes strong safety measures. Working closely with insurers during design can prevent surprises later. Sometimes small additions, like smoke detectors or reinforced glazing, can significantly reduce costs and increase coverage. Permitting authorities often require clear documentation to approve innovative designs. Detailed plans, performance simulations, and mock-ups may be needed to show how an open building will meet code requirements. For example, a movable wall system might need testing to prove it seals against weather or fire as effectively as a fixed wall. These steps can slow the process, but they also ensure safety and reliability. Balancing compliance with openness requires creativity. A fire-rated glass partition might satisfy code while keeping a visual connection. A sprinkler system can allow larger open spaces by compensating for the lack of compartment walls. Acoustic panels integrated into ceilings or furniture can meet noise standards without closing off rooms. These strategies turn regulation into a design challenge rather than a barrier. Community engagement is important as well. Open buildings affect not only their users, but also neighbors and the public. A house with wide openings might increase visibility into private life, raising concerns about privacy. A workplace without clear divisions might expose sensitive information or create distractions. Talking with stakeholders early in the process helps identify these issues. Adjustments can then be made, such as adding planting for screening or using partial partitions where needed. Care work, like childcare and elder care, benefits from visibility but also needs moments of privacy. In a multi-generational home, open layouts allow family members to watch over each other. A grandparent can sit in a central space while children play nearby, with everyone within sight. At the same time, caregivers need places to rest and recharge. Small retreats, even as simple as a screened corner or enclosed porch, can provide this relief. When care work is supported by design, both caregivers and those they support benefit. Noise management overlaps with social well-being. In shared spaces, sound can become a source of conflict. A neighbor's late-night music or a coworker's phone call may cause tension. Addressing acoustics through design reduces these conflicts before they start. White noise systems, carefully placed partitions, and sound-absorbing materials can create harmony. Openness also influences behavior. When activities are visible, people may feel more accountable. This can encourage positive actions, like tidiness or cooperation. However, constant visibility can lead to stress or performance pressure. Flexible boundaries allow people to choose when to engage and when to withdraw. This choice supports long-term mental health and community stability. Sustainability, safety, and regulation are intertwined. A well-designed open building uses fewer resources, performs efficiently, and protects its occupants. It also complies with rules while offering a unique experience. By addressing social, environmental, and regulatory dimensions together, openness becomes a strength rather than a liability. The result is a building that serves its users and its surroundings with clarity and care. The future of wall-light buildings will depend on materials and systems that make change easy. Heavy, fixed construction limits adaptability. Lightweight components allow spaces to grow, shrink, or transform over time. Modular parts are central to this approach. A module can be repeated, replaced, or rearranged without disturbing the whole structure. Imagine a small community center built from a series of prefabricated panels. As needs evolve, more modules can be added to create classrooms, a kitchen, or outdoor shelters. When a part wears out, it can be swapped without tearing down the entire building. This keeps costs low and reduces waste. Tensile structures add another layer of flexibility. Fabric membranes stretched over frames create large spans with minimal material. They are quick to build and easy to move. A market canopy, for example, can appear in a public square for weekend use. Then fold away during the week. In disaster relief, tensile shelters can provide immediate cover while permanent buildings are planned. These structures are strong yet light, making them ideal for temporary or seasonal needs. Bamboo offers a sustainable option for lightweight construction. It grows quickly, is renewable, and has high strength for its weight. In many parts of the world, bamboo has long been used for scaffolding, bridges, and housing. Today, engineered bamboo products bring traditional craft into modern design. A pavilion built from bamboo can flex slightly in the wind while remaining stable. Its joints can be lashed, bolted, or pegged, allowing for easy assembly and repair. Bamboo's natural flexibility suits projects that must adapt to shifting conditions. Prefabrication ties these ideas together. By producing parts in a controlled setting, quality improves and waste decreases. Prefabricated components can be shipped to a site and quickly assembled, much like a kit of parts. This method works for everything from small houses to multi-story buildings. It also supports customization. Standardized units can be combined in many ways, giving each project its own character. A school in one region might use the same frame system as a clinic in another, but with different finishes and layouts. Prefab makes wall-light construction practical at many scales. Technology will play an increasing role in how buildings respond to change. Mechatronic partitions are movable walls powered by small motors and sensors. They can slide, fold, or rotate with minimal effort. A conference center could shift from a single hall to several smaller rooms in minutes. With automation, these partitions adjust at the push of a button or even respond to occupancy patterns. This saves time and labor while giving users control over their environment. Responsive facades take adaptability to the building envelope. Panels on the exterior can open and close to manage light, heat, and airflow. In hot weather, they shade the interior. In cooler times, they retract to let in sun and warmth. Some systems use sensors to track temperature and sun angles, adjusting automatically. This reduces energy use while enhancing comfort. The facade becomes a living interface between inside and outside. Soft robotics pushes this idea further. Instead of rigid machines, soft robotic elements bend and flex like muscles. A ceiling made of flexible panels could rise and fall to shape acoustics or airflow. A window covering might ripple open like a curtain without mechanical tracks. These systems are still experimental, but they suggest a future where buildings behave more like living organisms. Their movements are subtle and continuous, adapting to people's needs without visible machinery. As these tools emerge, designers will need new ways of working. A wall light project requires careful planning from the start. Standard design checklists may not cover its unique challenges. Teams must consider how structure, systems, and furniture interact when walls are minimal. Questions about acoustics, fire safety, and privacy must be addressed early. This calls for new briefing documents that guide both architects and clients. In these briefs, clarity is key. They should explain the difference between fixed and flexible elements. A service core might house plumbing in mechanical systems, while open areas remain free for future changes. The client must understand the long-term benefits of this approach. It may cost more at first, but will save money over the life of the building by reducing major renovations. Realistic scenarios help make this case. A school might start with 4 classrooms and later grow to 8 without relocating. A house might adapt to a family's changing needs over decades. Client conversations should focus on behavior as much as layout. How will people use the space day to day? Where do they need privacy and where do they want connection? What activities might appear in the future? These discussions reveal patterns that guide design decisions. For example, a family that cooks and eats together may want a central, open kitchen. A group of artists might need flexible studios with movable partitions. By understanding these needs, architects can propose solutions that evolve gracefully. Checklists can also address regulations and risk. Open plans must still comply with building codes for accessibility, fire safety, and structural stability. Designers should verify early how egress routes, sprinkler systems, and emergency lighting will work in a wall light layout. Insurance requirements may call for specific safety features like alarms or reinforced glazing. Including these items in the checklist prevents costly surprises later. Maintenance and reconfiguration plans belong in the checklist as well. Movable elements require regular care. Tracks must be kept clean, fabrics inspected, and motors tested. Access panels should be clearly marked so systems can be serviced without damage. A reconfiguration playbook can guide future changes. It might include diagrams showing where partitions can be added, instructions for moving equipment, and safety rules for temporary layouts. These documents turn flexibility into a managed process rather than chaos. The everyday practice of wall light design will depend on teams who can think across disciplines. Architects, engineers, builders, and facility managers must work together. Structural choices affect acoustics. Mechanical systems shape spatial freedom. Even furniture selection influences how well the space functions. This integrated approach requires open communication and shared tools. Digital models help visualize changes before they happen, showing how a movable partition will interact with lighting or sprinklers. Training for users is another part of practice. Occupants need to understand how to operate movable walls, adjust facades, or care for bamboo elements. Simple guides and demonstrations can make this learning easy. When users feel confident, they are more likely to engage with the space and keep it functioning well. The vision that ties these pieces together is connection. In a wall-light world, the primary building block is not the wall, but the relationship between elements. A column connects roof to ground. Screen connects privacy to openness. A movable partition connects today's use to tomorrow's change. These connections extend beyond the physical. They link people to each other, to their environment, and to future possibilities. Imagine a neighborhood where houses open onto shared gardens. The boundaries between private and public blur, yet everyone has the ability to adjust their space as needed. A workshop hosts a community meeting one night and a dance class the next. A school grows over time by adding modules without disrupting classes. In each case, lightweight systems, responsive technologies, and thoughtful planning make change simple. This future will not arrive all at once. It will grow through small steps as designers and users test new tools and refine their methods. Some ideas, like soft robotic ceilings, may remain experimental for years. Others, like prefabricated frames or modular furniture, are ready now. The task is to choose wisely, adapting innovations to context and culture. A tropical region might focus on bamboo and natural ventilation. A dense urban site might prioritize movable partitions and acoustic design. As buildings become more open, the work of architecture shifts. It is no longer only about making objects, but about shaping systems and relationships. The wall becomes just one option among many. By focusing on connection, designers can create places that are light, flexible, and alive to the needs of the people who inhabit them.